So in my videos, I refer to some succulents as drama queens and kings. These are plants that often throw temper tantrums when conditions are not perfect. Now, these temper tantrums can manifest as just a very high susceptibility to fungus such as rot, powdery mildew, or black spot. It can be susceptibility to edema or split leaves, or they can be just a bit too tasty to the pests. I think it's quite important to talk about these plants because it signals that not all succulents are created equal and some are just a little bit more hardy than others. And I even made a video about succulents that I personally don't really like growing and think they are a little bit difficult. Obviously not for everyone. Some people can find them easy to grow, but I think for the majority, they can certainly be problematic. It opens up quite an interesting conversation about why we may be better off choosing succulents that are hardy and tolerant of many different conditions. So obviously, this is not going to be applicable to everyone. For instance, collectors or enthusiasts that want to grow specific succulents may not find this very useful. But if you just want succulents that look pretty for either your pots or garden, you may find this very interesting and hopefully helpful. So the first reason why it may be better to forego the pretty but dramatic succulents in favor of the more common ones is tolerance of extremes and different conditions. Many succulents will have limits, and even the toughest ones will probably have something that they will not survive. So most succulents are not frost tolerant. They can be tolerant of all the other extremes, but frost can and will kill them. Similarly, frost-tolerant succulents such as sempervivum usually don't really like heat waves and can die very easily when it's just too hot. It is one of the reasons why I don't really grow many sempervivum, because we often get temperatures over 45 degrees and they certainly do not like that. But there are succulents out there that can be tolerant of many other extremes. For instance, Graptopatulum paraguayans, which is one of my favorite plants to grow, is tolerant of high heat and direct sun in this heat, which can be well over 45 degrees Celsius. It is also tolerant of cold down to the freezing point, and I was even told that it can survive down to about -6 degrees Celsius. So that is absolutely amazing because I didn't think it could do that. It will tolerate drought for many months, but it will also tolerate overwatering and humidity. So Graptopatulum paraguayans is not the only succulent out there that can tolerate all of these conditions. There's quite a few others, and the plants that are playing in the background are just some of them. I have a video on the hardiest succulents that I grow in the nursery. I'll tag it down in the description. Now, I can see some of the comments that will say, well, I have killed some of these plants in the list, and you know, it can happen, and I cannot account for everybody's experiences, but these plants are fantastically hardy, and for the majority of people, I think they will grow very well in a lot of different conditions. The second reason why the tough varieties might be better is that they will grow well in many different positions. So for instance, here I have a bunch of Echeveria. They are growing in a spot that gets a little bit too shady for winter, which is not great because in winter we have a lot of powdery mildew going around. But these particular cultivars are not very susceptible, and I have not yet seen them with a lot of mildew, so they quite happily live in this shaded area. They don't get attacked, and they survive year on year. Now in summer they get the full sun from about 11 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and this space here can be quite literally an oven because we do get temperatures over 45 degrees Celsius, but they do survive that as well. They are also on a bit of a slope, but not too much, and they so far have been fine in heavy rains and high humidity. So I think these cultivars that I have here are just amazing, and I don't really have to worry about them too much. Now, funnily enough, next to these two echeverias, I had a Echeveria Black Prince, and that has rotted in the first big rain that we had after I've planted it. So just goes to show tougher plants are better. And the third reason I'd like to discuss is money. So succulents that are quite resilient are also one of the cheapest succulents you can buy. They are often quite easy to propagate and they don't cost an arm and a leg. So for instance, going back to Graptopetalum paraguayans, you can find them really, really cheap. When I had an online shop, I used to sell little plants for $2 Australian. And even now, if I sell bigger plants, I don't charge more than $4 because it doesn't cost me a lot of money to produce. And a lot of other growers are the same. If their plants are easy to propagate and raise, they don't have to use a lot of fungicides and pesticides, they will generally charge less for them. On the other hand, if you have, for instance, plants like the Echeveria Romeo, which I love because it's just so beautiful, but it's a major pain in the backside. It is susceptible to all of the fungal diseases. It's susceptible to edema, and it very rarely looks spotless. Like, you will always find something growing on them. It will either be powdery mildew or it will be marks from edema. They are very, very attractive to mealybugs, and all of this just makes it a very difficult plant to grow unless you have a greenhouse that has ventilation, and you will have to also use a lot of pesticides to keep the mealybugs away. Romeo also doesn't produce a lot of offsets, if any. I have a few plants and they don't really do that. You can behead them and this will force new growth, but it will be minimal. Most of the Romeos that I have grown have been bought in as tissue cultures, and it is one of the ways a lot of growers do grow their plants at the moment, which makes plants that normally don't propagate very well cheaper, but still, if they are a pain to raise, then they are going to be a little bit more expensive. So buying the tougher varieties will also be much kinder on your bank account balance. And the final reason is that you will not have to care for them as much. A lot of the succulents that I grow in my garden and in the nursery, I don't really have to do much with. The ones that are in the garden, I would just weed them and mulch them, and if it's way too dry, I water them, but that is about it. The tough varieties will look after themselves and they will not die in a hurry. Not to mention not having to feel the guilt of killing a succulent. It is something that I hear very, very often from people saying that they just feel so bad about killing plants and that it just discourages them from growing more. And I think this is why it's so important to talk about the difference between tough succulents and the varieties or cultivars that are not as tough. It is quite difficult also because many of the newer cultivars are not very hardy, but they are very pretty and also quite unusual, which attracts a lot of people. And often they think that because it's a succulent, it's just going to be easy to look after. But as we know, it's not always the case. So this is it. I hope this video was useful. Do let me know what you think in the comments. And also, I am very sorry if I don't reply. I'm getting quite a lot of comments and am busy at the nursery. So I don't have as much time to reply to all the comments, but I will try to reply to most. I do appreciate you taking the time to comment and always love reading comments. So thank you again, and I'll see you all next time.